Was it always this nuts? Were people always just this blatantly hypocritical? Because I was talking about this with my best friend the other day, and he was just like, no, they were always hypocrites, Josh. You just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, maybe that's true. So, like, what? You've been sort of watching this a bit longer than I have, and maybe you were sort of watching politics, because it feels like since about 2010, 2012-ish, things have really, like, gone off the rocker a bit.
Yes.
So, like, you were watching things a bit before that, because I was like 18, 2012. I was just coming out of school. So it's hard for me to really like get a genuine perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, was it always this mad? Were the people always this like? Because the example that springs to mind right now is the abortion debate that went on in America recently with that leaked Roe v. Wade thing, and then obviously like I'll not go into like what's going on with that, or like we'll not get into abortion, but like they were preaching it's like, it's my body, my choice. Like no one should have the decision.
After the past 2 years, yeah.
Or after the past 2 years, like Kamala Harris, like tweeting about like we're approaching this moment where the government might have control over your body, and I was like, you have to be trolling. Yeah. Like you can't be this hypocritical,
dude. What about these people who have been talking about that? A systemically racist policy is something that disproportionately affects black people and minorities and whatever, and then the whole vaccine passport situation, right, in places like in New York City, the majority of young black Americans in New York City were not vaccinated, and they literally made a policy that would ban the majority of young black people in not just New York City. They did it in San Francisco. They did it in LA. All these so-called progressive places. They literally implemented this policy that's, number one, directly discriminatory, like an actual segregationist policy, right? And yes, you can claim they claim it's under the banner of health and safety or whatever. But again, it's the same point you're making. It's just showing doubly so. So number one, you've got this whole my body, my choice thing. Government, don't tell me what to do with my body.
Which I'm on board with.
You've literally got people trying to force injections into people. And that's what you're advocating for. And now you want to conveniently turn around. And I made this point way prior to this whole Roe versus Wade thing, because it's, I'm a pro-life person. I'm very much opposed to abortion. But I was like, again, it's the point I was making earlier. If you're going to claim a certain position, and that's even your slogan and mantra, is my body, my choice, right?
Wear a fucking
yeah, right. If that is your slogan, then at least I may disagree with you on this issue, but at least be consistent. Like at least be consistent with it. Right. And that went out the window. And again, the same with the desegregation. So to come back to answer your original question, it hasn't always been like that. It hasn't always been like this.
Then what changed?
I think this is a great question. It's a really good question because it's something I think about a lot. It's a number of factors, I think. A lot of people point to social media. Social media is a factor. It's a factor because, when was the combination of social media and smartphones, which really came together around 2006, 2007, and really maybe by about 2010, 2011, we reached a point where maybe most people had a smartphone and were on some type of social media. Mm-hmm. So I think that perfectly coincides with that period, because most people would say it's about 10 years ago when it really started to accelerate. That's a factor. I think that's an accelerant. I think the much bigger factor, and I don't hear a lot of people making this point or talking about it. I think the bigger factor is, for the first time in history, and the first place anywhere, we have actually reached a point where there is proper equality under the law. If you think back, and the final domino that anyone could have argued was same-sex marriage. When was that?
2012, I think.
It's around the same time.
Yeah.
Right? When did all the trans stuff kick off? It's the same time. Right? That was the final domino. After that, all of the important fights had been fought and won. for the first time ever, like in human history, if you go back to any time period prior to 2012, you could point to a law in the books and say, that discriminates against that group of people. From the blatant ones, from, having slavery and some people not even being considered citizens, to some people being denied voting rights, some people, being allowed to pay one group less for the same work than others, having there's all types of discrimination, and there's still many discriminatory laws on the books in different countries around the world. But in the UK, in the US, in Canada, and so on, the final thing that someone could have pointed at, and this is not an argument for nor against same-sex marriage, but that was the last one that someone could say, that law discriminates against a group of people, right? And that was it. And I think now there's this situation where you have people, I mean, the entire left side of the political aisle, really, for all of these decades and centuries, the fight was for equality, right? It was for equal rights. Like, that was a big part. Of course, there's the, the financial and social factor, but the big thing was always like, look, the proper role of liberals, as far as I'm concerned, is to be champions of civil rights and equality, equal treatment under the laws, like in individual rights, right? Treat people as individuals, don't discriminate against people based on their race or their ethnicity or their sex or their sexuality, and so on and so forth. And all these times, as I said, there was always a group you could point at and say, look, like, that's not fair. We want to advocate for this. Think back to all the civil rights movements they had. It had a clear goal, right? We want to get voting rights for this group of people. We want voting rights for women. We want voting rights for black people. We want this group to be able to buy property. We want this discrimination to stop. It shouldn't be fair. It shouldn't be legal to do this, do that. It's all been won. And that's when I noticed that the left side of the aisle went off the hinges, because you have all these activist-minded people who want to fight for something. Right? They want to fight for something. There's got to be some victim group. Someone's got to be being oppressed somewhere. And I think this is also why they've latched on so incredibly and doggedly hard to the transgender thing, because it wasn't even in the conversation before 2012. Right? It wasn't in the even the word transgender wasn't really in the lexicon. Transsexual was, transvestite was, but this whole transgender thing. And even now, when people say, where I'm fighting for trans rights, like, what does that mean? They already have them. Everyone already has equal rights. So I think that's a part of it, especially from the left side of the aisle. And naturally, the right side of the aisle, it tends to react to what's happening, for what's being pushed from the other side. So I think it's created that conflict. And then, like I said, it's been fueled by social media. And then also what people have, or what people feel they have in common has decreased. I don't think necessarily, I think some of it is real and some of it is artificial. But I think that due to the media and due to the political rhetoric, the focus is always on the differences. If you think of it, right? Yeah. The political and social clashes, it's never what do we have in common. People are being trained to focus on the difference, right? When we were growing up, and again, you see this in different ways. When we were growing up, I imagine we both learned, like, if it was even, I don't even think it needed to be explicitly taught. But
I don't know. I don't remember ever being like outright stated. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.